being flat. Thank you again for the honor of testifying today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I thank the witnesses.
Mr. Chairman, I seek recognition.
Who seeks recognition?
Me, Mr. Chairman.
For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion pursuant to Rule 11, specifically 2K6. I move to subpoena the individual commonly referred to as the whistleblower. I asked to do this in executive
The gentleman has
session.
stated his motion. Do I hear a motion to table?
I move to table the motion.
Motion is to table. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No. Mr. Chairman, roll call vote.
Motion to table is approved. The roll call is requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Nadler?
Aye.
Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren?
Aye.
Ms. Lofgren votes aye. Ms. Jackson-Lee?
Aye.
Ms. Jackson-Lee votes aye. Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Cohen votes aye. Mr. Johnson of Georgia?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson of Georgia votes aye. Mr. Deutsch?
Aye.
Mr. Deutsch votes aye. Ms. Bass?
Aye.
Ms. Bass votes aye. Mr. Richmond?
Aye.
Mr. Richmond votes aye. Mr. Jeffries?
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries votes aye. Mr. Cicilline?
Aye.
Mr. Cicilline votes aye. Mr. Swalwell?
Aye.
Mr. Swalwell votes aye. Mr. Liu? Mr. Liu votes aye. Mr. Raskin?
Aye.
Mr. Raskin votes aye. Ms. Jayapal? Ms. Jayapal votes aye. Ms. Demings? Ms. Demings votes aye. Mr. Correa?
Aye.
Mr. Correa votes aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon votes aye. Ms. Garcia?
Aye.
Ms. Garcia votes aye. Mr. Neguse?
Aye.
Mr. Neguse votes aye. Ms. McBath?
Aye.
Ms. McBath votes aye. Mr. Stanton?
Aye.
Mr. Stanton votes aye. Ms. Dean?
Aye.
Ms. Dean votes aye. Ms. McCarcel-Powell?
Aye.
Ms. McCarcel-Powell votes aye. Ms. Escobar?
Aye.
Ms. Escobar votes aye. Mr. Collins? Mr. Sensenbrenner? Mr. Shabbat?
No.
Mr. Shabbat votes no. Mr. Gomert? No. Mr. Gomert votes no. Mr. Jordan? Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Buck? No. Mr. Buck votes no. Mr. Ratcliffe? Mr. Ratcliffe votes no. Ms. Roby? Ms. Roby votes no. Mr. Gates? Mr. Gates votes no. Mr. Johnson of Louisiana? No. Mr. Johnson of Louisiana votes no. Mr. Biggs? Did he say no? Mr. Biggs? No. Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock?
No.
Mr. McClintock votes no. Ms. Lesko?
No.
Ms. Lesko votes no. Mr. Reschenthaler?
No.
Mr. Reschenthaler votes no. Mr. Klein?
No.
Mr. Klein votes no. Mr. Armstrong?
No.
Mr. Armstrong votes no. Mr. Stubbe?
No.
Mr. Stubbe votes no.
Has everyone voted who wishes to vote?
Mr. Chairman, how am I recorded?
Mr. Collins, you are not recorded.
No.
Mr. Collins votes no.
Is there anyone else who wishes to vote?
Mr. Chairman, how am I recorded?
Mr. Sensenbrenner, you are not recorded.
No.
Mr. Sensenbrenner votes no.
Anyone else? The clerk will report.